Hello, everyone that is out there in Cyberland. Last time we had a good discussion with Anthony McFarlane Gonzalez, but today it's Will Richardson here and Nicholas Richardson there.
Hello.
There. Wait, you can't see my finger. There. Okay. You're not supposed to point. It's rude, isn't it?
It is.
You're an English fella. That's rude, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Considered to be.
Yeah, well, I won't do that. I won't do this again. I'm not going to do any more of that. Okay?
Okay.
Does that make you happy?
Yeah, fine.
You know what time of year it is today? I mean, this is the wonderful Wednesday podcast. We're doing it on Thursday because it's a special day today. And what's it called?
For Americans, it's called Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and you all celebrate this in England. It's one of your biggest holidays after Christmas, I suppose.
We don't celebrate it at all.
No?
No, obviously, we were mildly pleased that you all made it safely.
Across the water. Anyway, so you were? I didn't read that in what's his name? When you Samuel Johnson's.
No, you wouldn't.
Accounts. It wasn't there.
Some things are best said unsaid.
Yeah, and I don't think Edmund Burke talked about it either in the House of Commons. We're awfully happy that they made it. What? They didn't speak like that then, though, did they? What was the accent like then in the 18th century?
We don't know. We don't know, really. I mean, probably very regional.
Yeah, it was quite regional, I would say.
The idea of a sort of unified English is a relatively modern invention.
I mean,
not linguistically, but in terms of accent, the idea there should be some sort of so-called received pronunciation is a relatively modern, or BBC English is a relatively modern invention. If we were to go back and listen to the great politicians of the 19th century, Gladstone, Peel and the like, then they would have spoken with, well, in their cases, probably with Lancashire or Liverpool accents, such as they were then.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? They say the accent in the Appalachian Mountains is similar to the 18th century or 17th century, 18th century accent in England. And there's also a island off the coast, I think it's just one island off the coast of North Carolina, where they speak like a Cornishman. However that is, it's like, How does a Cornishman speak? Do we know?
I can't do it, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's that sort of West Country.
Oh yeah. It's not like that's Yorkshire.
That sounds more like Norwegian or something.
It is actually a Norwegian Yorkshireman because they were there.
They were, some of them.
I can't think maybe it'll come to me and I'll do a little bit later. But I can't do accent. My brain is cold today. It's end of November.
It is.
It's dark and my brain is cold and dark.
Well, it's a little less dark here than it was early this morning, I have to say.
Yeah, well, at least I've got light. Look, when you're in the mountains like me, I'm about to go climb that peak. I don't know what peak it is, but I'm going to be up there.
It looks a bit like the Matterhorn, but it can't be the Matterhorn, can it?
I don't know, whatever it is.
I can't quite see it. It looks a bit like
it Zermatt? I don't know. I'm going up there because that's how I roll.
Yeah.
I roll down the hill if I'm not careful. A long, long way and never stop. I want to do the Eiger sanction.
Eiger sanction, yes.
Is it Eiger?
I think so.
You're always correcting me. Damn it. I wish I was educated properly. I never get these words right. These big words like eager.
I've been to the little town where where the train goes before they start climbing the mountain. Kleine Scheidegg, I think it's called.
Kleine Scheidegg? That sounds.
Yeah, that's where the train. That's where they go on that little train. That's where the railway station there.
Say that again. What is it?
I think it's Kleine Scheidegg.
Stop threatening me.
Which I think also, now I think about it, although it is the opposite side of the valley, also appeared in the James Bond film on Her Majesty's Secret Service, where they go up the mountain and the Schildhorn mountain is, of course, now you can go up, and it is in fact a cafe run by Swiss Railways.
That's amazing.
On the top of the Schildhorn, it's actually quite a good view. I mean, it used to be the case many moons ago, which was actually very irresponsible, that during the skiing season you could go up on the railway, but you had to ski down. You couldn't go back down on the train. And the point being, it's a very difficult ski run down, or it was. So that was just the Swiss encouraging or discouraging a sort of sensible behaviour, depending on how good your skiing is. Anyway, sorry, I've digressed from Thanksgiving, although I suppose
we have to go back to Thanksgiving because I have to ask you. I have to ask you what you know about Thanksgiving.
Not very much. Something the Americans take very seriously. Wasn't it giving thanks for the first crop rather than the first harvest?
Well, that's what they say. There was a. It's actually the most popular holiday in the United States. Even like 95% of people celebrate Thanksgiving. Only 74% celebrate Christmas. Of course, there are reasons for that, religious reasons. People who are not Christian, for example, and then people who don't care or are agnostic, don't have any religion. Excuse me. But yeah, it's the story was, you've heard the story of the Pilgrim Fathers, right?
The Pilgrim Fathers, yeah, Plymouth Rock.
Yeah, yeah, and they got over there and
on the Mayflower.
The Mayflower, yeah. They landed at Plymouth Rock. That's where Massachusetts is now, and to celebrate surviving the first winter, with the help of the Indians, actually, and the story is that a fellow named Squanto was the lead figure for the Indians in the neighborhood. And he was able to teach the colonists how to plant some various crops. And then they were able to celebrate that harvest in the autumn, and they survived. I don't know if it was the first one or the second one, but it was to celebrate the first crops. Apparently. I mean, you never know. I mean, I guess they wrote about it, but I haven't made a special study of Thanksgiving, other than to know that's the story they taught us when we were kids. And you're supposed to be very thankful. I don't know what all this stuff is that people don't like the Indians, because we were taught in school way back when to think the Indians were all right, particularly because of Thanksgiving.
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't know why people don't like them.
Yeah.
But who says they don't like them? I mean, it's the left accusing everybody else of not liking them. It doesn't mean that they themselves are not liked.
No, that's true.
That's always the case of the left trying to divide.
That's true.
What they're attributing to other people their own deep-seated neuroses.
Well, I don't want to get. Let's talk about Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but let's talk about Thanksgiving. But yes,
yeah, I don't want to get into all this.
Not again, no.
Stuff, about the election. I have a very large cat sitting next to me today.
Yes, good.
I'm not in the office or anywhere else, and I'm hoping he is going to go to sleep, all 22 pounds of him, and let me work. But he's settling into my other office chair. That's where he likes to stay.
Good.
Anyway, he's a good man. He's a good man, but he gets a bit restless from time to time and swings from the chandelier.
Excuse me.
Right, so that's Thanksgiving, and in America today, it's the biggest travel day of the year, travel weekend, because it's always the last Thursday in November. Okay.
And how does that actually, the November, how does that actually relate to the historical origin? Or is it just it became November for no particular reason?
Well, because it's after the harvest.
Yes, that's what I said.
That's after the harvest. That's the reason.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
That it's in November, but it wasn't a holiday. I mean, they celebrated, right? Reportedly. I wasn't there. But according to sources, they celebrated in 1620 or 21 or whatever it was. It was right around that. It was 1619 they landed there. This was after Jamestown. Of course, the colonists down in Jamestown had been there since 1607. And the first settlement, Jamestown in Virginia, and they had been celebrating their harvest because they almost starved to death several years, different years. And they had the Indians help them, and there was Pocahontas, everybody knows that story, who eventually went to London. Pocahontas was...
That's right.
A big traveler, and she was a toast of the town. So stop saying Indians weren't respected. They were.
They were very respected. This seems to be a modern idea that they weren't.
Yeah. And we need to put the lie to that. So and then even before that, in North Carolina, they landed on an island called Ocracoke, just off the coast of North Carolina. And the colonists then disappeared. A boat went back to England and came back, and they were all gone, and they never found them. They don't know what happened to them to this day. They didn't find bodies, bones, nothing. So no one knows what happened. There are Indian accounts lead people to believe that they went to live with the Indians. There are other accounts that lead them to believe that they were killed by the Indians, but no one knows what happened to the lost colony founded by Sir Walter Raleigh, for whom Raleigh, North Carolina, capital of North Carolina, is named. So there were these three settlements. The last one that we celebrate. Okay, why didn't they celebrate Jamestown as the first Thanksgiving? Because it was Lincoln who created this. I believe it was 1863, during the Civil War, just after Gettysburg in the autumn. It was a Thanksgiving for being ahead in the war at that point, because the turning point was in the summer.
Right.
With the victory at Gettysburg and at Vicksburg in Mississippi, Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. Everybody knows about that. If you don't know about Vicksburg and Gettysburg, go to YouTube. There's lots of great stuff, and it's fascinating stuff if you are interested in great generals fighting each other and great struggles, military struggles. It's like Gettysburg is like Waterloo. It's one of those huge battles of the 19th century. So, yeah. So he created Thanksgiving as a way of celebration and using the Pilgrim accomplishments of survival as a remembrance that would also be symbolic for during the Civil War, or the war between the states, or the late unpleasantness. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what that was all about. And then it became more and more over the years a celebration. And really, I believe it was Franklin Roosevelt who really made it a big thing during his tenure, which was 16. How many years was it? 13 years.
Yes.
Until he died. That was a long time. Presidents don't serve that long anymore. It's only maximum 8 years. Anyway, so that's Thanksgiving. Now, what do you eat at Thanksgiving? It's very British, actually, what you eat at Thanksgiving.
Well, no, it's not. I'm going to correct you there, but you eat
correct me.
You eat turkey.
What?
You eat turkey.
Okay.
Now, turkey has become in many ways the most common of the British Christmas lunches. But traditionally, and if you read Dickens, of course, it was goose. And goose has a much better flavour than turkey, I think. But the problem with goose is there's not a lot of meat on it. So if you have a large family, you can get a large turkey and feed them. With a goose, you might need to have 2 geese in the oven. And goose produces a lot of fat, which is excellent for doing your roast potatoes. But otherwise, is much harder to cook than just sticking turkey into the oven. So turkey in the modern era has become much more popular. But the traditional Christmas lunch was goose. But yeah, I know Americans have always had, or those of the United States, in case we have people writing in saying, I'm from Peru and I'm not, anyway.
You think Peruvians will write in? I hope so.
Yeah, but they're probably writing in Spanish, so we may not understand what they're saying.
I can Google Translate.
Yes, of course. So you have turkey. You probably have something else as well. Yeah,
cranberry sauce.
Cranberry sauce, okay. That's
and
good
then
with turkey.
Sweet potato, but in England it would be mashed potato, or some kind of potato casserole. And then you have, Brussels sprouts. It's very English, this stuff. Brussels sprouts and that kind of corn, something. That's not British, but you have the corn bread or some kind of spoon bread, we call it in the South, because you got to have some corn, because that was the big saving grace. There was no corn of that kind in England. It was until it was brought there, right? So you had that, but maybe the Spanish were bringing it. Maize over, which is essentially the same thing. I think, and then you have gravy, and you have stuffing, which is a bread with onions and peppers and.
Yeah, I think we all know what stuffing is.
Well, you have that.
We do have that as well, yes.
Yeah. So because when I used to live in England and on the holidays that we'd have food that was very similar.
For Christmas, yeah.
Yeah, the Christmas food was very similar to Thanksgiving. So I didn't really miss Thanksgiving because I knew I was going to have it at Christmas time.
Of course.
I was going to get the big feast and then lie around playing board games. BOARD.
Yes, of course.
Not BORD.
Yes.
No, like Risk, where you get to take over the world, things like that, which the British like. It's a very popular game in Britain, Risk.
It was. I don't know. I think board games are less popular than they used to be because everybody can do things on their computer.
Yeah, everybody goes and plays these games alone, or they go and play against each other on the television.
There used to be a good game that my cousins had I think it was called Pirates, where you collected treasure. Yeah, that was a good game, but I don't think I've ever seen it in the modern era. So did
you play Monopoly?
Yeah, Monopoly's a good one.
And Chinese checkers?
Chinese checkers, yes.
Yeah, that was a good one. And regular checkers and chess, of course.
Chess and a variety of card games.
A lot of cards. That's what we used to play in England. Cards. Oh boy, a lot of cards. What was it called? Patience. No, patience is one alone. You play alone.
Yeah, well, like solitaire.
Yeah, it's like solitaire. But what's the other? I used to play that a lot.
Whist, bridge.
Yeah, bridge. That was one, and of course, and I don't know. I can't remember right now. I haven't played cards in ages. I play poker every now and then, but we didn't sit around and play poker. You can't sit around and play poker with the family. Take all their money. Can't play strip poker. That's too risque.
Yes.
It's unfair to grandma. I mean, who wants to see that? And, you just can't do it. You can't do it. Yeah. Yeah. What else do you want to know about Thanksgiving? Well, they have a big parade. I'll tell you. They have a lot of football games. So there'll be football games on today, tomorrow, Saturday. It's called Rivalry Week. And and even in the professional leagues, you get rivalry games like Detroit plays Green Bay or something like that. Chicago plays Detroit. It's these kind of the old teams play. They've been playing forever. Yeah. What?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm acknowledging, yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to add something about American football because I know.
Well, apart from the fact it must be a very boring game to watch because you're always stopping.
And that's not boring. It's like playing chess. I mean, you have moves and then you stop and then there's the next move. It's more like that, actually. It's not really boring once you know the game. Is cricket boring?
Not at all. But then you don't actually stop in cricket. You only stop in cricket though for tea and things like that. You don't just stop halfway through the game because you've got to.
Yeah, but it's slow and it can take a long time. A guy can sit there just, touching the ball, stopping the ball rather than taking a whack at it forever.
Yeah, but I think they generally do. I think most of them generally do try to take a whack at it, actually.
I don't know. I saw some guys stand there for.
Well, Geoffrey Boycott, the great Yorkshire cricketer, was always renowned for doing that.
Yeah, not both of them.
For being in for a long time.
Yeah,
he was a great cricketer.
Boycott was amazing. Yeah.
He got his 100th Test century at Headingley, sort of his local ground. So that was a very moving moment for him.
Yeah, I wrote about cricket one time. I told you about that.
Yeah.
I wrote a piece called "It's Not Baseball."
It certainly isn't.
Because the thing, what do you say in cricket? It's, in life, you say, it's not cricket.
It's not cricket.
Used to. People don't say that anymore, do they?
Well, they seem a lot of.
What you doing, governor?
A lot of things that we took for granted or similar. people just don't use anymore, which I don't know why. It's all become very utilitarian and uninteresting.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's from computer language and whatever. And also the very slangy.
Oh, dreadful.
And the writing is very slangy and meaningless and full of cliches, I find. You have to fight those cliches. At the end of the day, you have to really fight those cliches at the end of the day.
You do, at the end of the day, yes, quite.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, you have to fight the cliches. Anyway, that's one of the cliches. That's why I'm saying it over and over. But what else? Oh, yeah, and they have a big parade in New York. The Macy's Day Parade happens in New York. So what, I mean, knowing what you know about Thanksgiving, would you like to, I mean, maybe we'll go to Thanksgiving tonight if you want to drop
Maybe.
in.
We'll see if it depends on whether how soon I finish.
You can after the studio, yeah.
Yeah, how quickly, because yesterday it took a bit longer because somebody was ill, so it was a bit later.
Anyway, you're welcome.
Thank you, that's exceedingly kind.
You just send me a message and you can come along and you can sample some of these amazing foods at the beautiful hotel over there where the thing's going to be. Yeah, where the gathering, Americans gathering will happen. Yeah, a lot of my friends are in the States. I almost went, but I'm putting off that trip till later in the year or the beginning of the new year. At any rate, so that's Thanksgiving. It's all about the turkey and the stuffing and the food and the family get together. Let me ask you a question. You think it's a good idea when you get together with a family, start drinking and talking politics?
Well, I think most people, when they get together with the family, they don't necessarily start drinking, talking politics, do they? I mean, it's, they just have a general, because often, particularly, for example, at Christmas, you get family together who you might not see very frequently during the year, so you have lots of family news to talk about.
And hopefully you stay away from politics and you don't drink too much and start
you don't
slugging your uncle.
Well, exactly. I mean, I don't know. I fortunately don't live, and I suspect you don't live in the sort of household where people drink to excess and fall out with each other.
Well, I don't drink, so
no.
I learned a while ago not to do that on the holidays. I used to, and it only leads to morose behavior and that sort of thing. It's better not to drink and.
Well, exactly. Go for a walk. The old adages are best. All things in moderation.
Yeah, and then you can drive and you can go around and do something. You can go go down to the beach or go for a walk on the hills or across the countryside in Yorkshire where you live. It's much nicer, isn't it?
It is.
We always used to go for a bracing walk on the holidays in England. In the winter, all main ones are in the winter.
Yeah, especially along the beach, which is normally deserted.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. England's a lovely place. Too bad they're ruining it, but that's.
Well, it is too bad they're ruining it. It's ironic that the green lobby are ruining it by covering it in electricity pylons and windmills and solar farms, destroying the actual real farms which produce food and thereby food security. I mean, it's just, you couldn't make it up.
Oh, here you go. Here you go again. You're going to start ranting.
I am the worst possible of all examples, and we now end up with the highest energy costs in Europe. I mean, electricity costs, for example. It's just crazy. They're achieving emissions reduction by actually closing down industry. So what are our people supposed to do?
Yeah, but they changed the name. It's not the green and pleasant land anymore. It's the mean and peasant land.
Well, this is exactly what they are trying to create.
The mean and peasant land.
I'm afraid
that's speak English.
That's
instead of the green and pleasant land.
That's what you get with the new Labour government, certainly.
Yeah, that's. I threw that out for you because I knew you'd like it.
Well, it's true.
I knew it would fit with your thesis.
Or even dare I say it?
Yeah.
The mean and crescent land, for those of our viewers who are have their brains in gear, but you could say that for the whole of Europe, actually.
Crescent doesn't quite rhyme, but that's a beautiful sort of.
Yeah, but it conveys a lot of meaning.
Yeah, it really does. That's
for those who are switched on.
Yeah, it's good to see you not rhyming for a change. Because you only like poetry that rhymes. I remember.
I'm old-fashioned. I like poetry that rhymes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the shores of Gitche Gumee, by the flowing Big Sea water, stood a boy named Hiawatha.
Something
And
like
something,
that.
something or other.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
So that's Thanksgiving in a nutshell, is it?
That's Thanksgiving in a nutshell. Let's move on, because I have found some things that you're going to love. There's a site that I look at every day because it keeps me grounded in stupidity. And people who know me well will understand what I mean by that. And people who know me not so well can learn it now. But the thing is, there used to be a site, there is a site that called the Drudge Report.com.
Okay.
Drudge Report.com. DRUDGE. Drudge. And it was started by a guy called Matt Drudge, who was a reporter who made his name and in the 90s by over the Monica Lewinsky dress with some of Bill Clinton's essence on it, apparently.
Okay, I remember that, yes.
Yeah, Essence de Clinton. And all right, so he broke that story and then created a website right away and then started compiling. He was the first guy to compile, I think, or one of the first to compile a website with links to different stories in different places that were online. And he grew that over time. And it's still very much looked at. But he was very conservative, but instead of being conservative now, it's very left wing, because apparently, according to anonymous sources, no, a friend of mine who works in a 7-Eleven around the corner, that's a convenience store. He told me that it's now bought by left-wing people, and because I was looking at headlines going, why are these people every day calling Trump Hitler? I thought it was Matt Drudge. But I mean, I knew it wasn't Matt Drudge anymore, but I didn't realize it had become left-wing, because Drudge sold out. He hated Trump. He started out supporting Trump, then he started hating Trump.
Okay.
And there you go. Anyway, so there's lots of weird articles here and stuff to look at. Oh, stop. And one of these is that, I mean, there's lots of political stories here. This is funny. The U.S. economy grew by 2.8%, which is not bad, is it?
That's very good for an advanced economy.
Good. In the third quarter, but was that because they were anticipating a new government? Or no one really knows. But they're saying that Trump's return should favor a growth in stocks. Now, I like that. I like it when stocks grow, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important. So, I mean, that's where everybody has to put their money because of there's no interest rates. People have been putting their money in stocks for years now. Sharon Stone, you remember her? Remember Sharon Stone?
Yep.
Okay, there's an interview with her in The Guardian, or maybe she wrote, no, it's an interview. Sharon Stone has hit out against the extraordinary naivete she feels has steered the U.S. into a period of ignorant, arrogant adolescence. Now you, being a member of the society, big brothers of the United States, we celebrate the Thanksgiving. It's one of our celebrations of getting across the water and away from England. What do you think about that? America has entered into a period of ignorant, arrogant adolescence. What do you think about that?
Interesting analysis. I mean, I think we would all agree, and it's not just the United States, that ignorance and the celebration of ignorance, or rather the celebration of willful ignorance, it seems to be a growing trend in the West, unfortunately, which is manifest in all sorts of things, generally stupid statements, pulling down statues, a complete ignorance of history, the unwillingness even to consider that those who came before us might actually have known what they were doing. And you see this most clearly, of course, in universities with their cancel culture, etc., etc. So in that sense, she may be correct, but I suspect she's trying to make rather instead of
let me read you what she said and then comment. Okay, I'll throw it back to you. She was making a speech at a film festival in Torino, where she was getting an award. Torino's Italy. Last time I checked. Anyway, she says, one of the things she said, we have to stop and think about who we use for government. And in fact, we are actually, if we are choosing our government, or if the government is choosing it itself. She goes, you know, Italy has seen fascism, because she's in Italy, right? Italy has seen these things. You guys understand what happens. You've seen this before. I love how she calls the Italians, you guys. And nobody there has seen fascism because it was a long time ago. And they showed their distaste for fascism by literally cutting off Mussolini's head.
Well, of course they did, yes.
Yeah. So Mussolini didn't fare very well, and Italians since then have not been very fascistic. But by the way, can you give us a definition of fascism? Because people always get it wrong these days, just like they get it wrong what Hitler is about. And I think Sharon Stone is supposed to have this amazing IQ. That doesn't sound very smart to me, but go ahead.
No, well, she is reputed to be more intelligent than most of the people in that particular area of expertise.
Well, she's supposed to have this 150 IQ or something, but that doesn't sound like 150 to me, calling Italians guys. I'm kidding. I'm kidding about that. But obviously, but what is fascism?
Well, this is the trouble these days because everything has become so sort of perverted to make a modern political point. I mean, I think it was, it was essentially it was the Italian very right-wing ultranational ideology that putting the nation before everything else.
That's it. Yes, and also the marriage of corporations with the government.
Yes,
shared bureaucratic tyranny,
and that you sublimate the individual to the sort of national good as you perceive it, often with a high dose of militarism. I mean, the important thing to remember is, of course, that Hitler wasn't a fascist; he was actually a socialist.
He was called National
Socialist Democratic Workers' Party, whatever the Nazi Party was in its official title. Yeah. So I don't think America has the United States has actually seen fascism, thank goodness. These were peculiar to essentially the 1930s. What I think America does have, but this is not a Trump point. I mean, America does certainly have a very close relationship between big business and government, which it has always had, which is slightly different from a fascist solution, because at the same time, to counter that, the United States rather has a very strong tradition of personal liberty. The First Amendment to the Constitution, the right of free speech, which many other countries simply don't have, and it's quite frightening, as that great bastion, surprisingly, of free speech Elon Musk has said about the United Kingdom under Labour. Although it started before this current Labour government, this decreasing respect for the concept of free speech in the United Kingdom and indeed in the European Union. Your speech is free, provided you say things with which I agree. And if you say things with which I disagree, I'm not going to engage you in debate. I'm going to tell you you're wrong. And because you're wrong, you have sacrificed the right to be heard at all. And this is the problem. And that is actually a very fascist response to any form of criticism or social debate, I think.
I agree with you. I mean, it's a very good comment. Can I tell you something else she said? Because this is something we can sink our teeth into as well. You ready?
Yes.
She said, Sharon Stone says, going on, Americans don't travel. They don't, 80% don't have a passport. They're uneducated and are extraordinary in their naivete. What I can say is the only way that we can help with these issues is to help each other. I don't know what that last part means, but 80% of Americans don't have a passport. Here's what I want to ask you. America is the imperial power since the end, really, of certainly of World War II. You can make a case for World War I, because Wilson led the peace in World War I, at the end of World War I. But the British imperialism, which was what Americans inherited, the power vacuum, if you will, as Britain fell apart, helped partly by Roosevelt. Why do you suppose American response is different from the British response to being in charge? Because we're seeing this now with the isolationism toward events in Europe even today, and particularly regarding Ukraine and to some extent Israel. What do you say about that? Why is America different in its response? Not willing to take leadership, and Americans not curious about the world beyond, apparently.
Well, I think, yeah, I don't. I
if
think
that's true, that 80%.
The British came from an island, of my definition, and it was an island where we used to. Sorry, let me just kill that. I don't know how to turn the sound off on my telephone.
Well, you can answer it and just say I'm busy.
No. Well, I've just killed it because and so as an island, people were more curious, and we had this history of sailing to other parts of the world. So that meant us more. That meant we were more curious.
Did it? Will you?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Hello. Fine. Sorry. Can I just call you back? Because I'm just in the middle of a conference call. Thanks. Sorry about that.
You're using a landline. That's amazing.
It's an internet landline. Yeah.
It's a landline?
It is a landline. Well, yeah, but it's sort of it's an internet telephone.
I mean, that was such a traditional blast from the. Thank you for that, because a lot of people had never seen a landline before.
No. Well, it's not really a landline because it is connected to a computer, but it's an internet telephone.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But I mean,
you just said it was a landline.
But it functions just like a landline to all intents and purposes.
Okay.
I use it for making landline calls, albeit over the internet. It's like
dial
a normal number and it gets through.
Go ahead with your.
Yeah, so as an island nation, and with this tradition of sailing to other parts of the world, we actually did have a more, despite the so-called Little England abuse, which is hurled at us particularly by the Germans, who of course are little Mittel Europas, if ever there were any people with no vision beyond their immediate borderlands.
With myopia.
Yes, exactly, and that did make people, I think, more curious.
Yeah.
And then as history developed, trading. And the empire arose really out of trading arrangements because it's where people stopped and traded. And the great thing that the British Empire was acquired in a fit of absent-mindedness is probably true, because we weren't like the Romans. We didn't send out legions from the United Kingdom to go or Great Britain or England, as it was at various times in history, to go and conquer other peoples. It kind of happened.
What an interesting point. And it's you just.
I mean, the only really wars, and they weren't even wars by the government, were the British East India Company in India, which was fighting the French for commercial advantage. The colonies in South Africa developed out of essentially South Africa became a stop where you recoaled and resupplied your ships on the way to the east. I mean, the whole thing is.
Yeah.
It was essentially built out of trade. But
wait a second. You're saying that America, the UK or Britain, before it was the UK, beginning of the 18th century, that they created an empire without really noticing, right?
Well, I think it happened. There was no imperial plan. I think it happened accidentally. And I think what happened is, as knowledge advanced, then it was felt that this rather ramshackle organization had to have a bit of structure applied to it. Which is then, of course, you got in the late 19th century, which was all part of the Matthew Arnold concept of public service and so on. You got people who were sent out to administer the empire and had a good education, but in their own minds, I think, very much saw themselves as sort of the heirs to Roman or Greek civilization, and we had this civilizing mission, which is also tied up to an extent with the sort of muscular Christianity which you got in the late Victorian period.
Yeah, interesting.
But I think certainly if you look at it in the 18th century, it was very much a commercial decision. And, you know, the various islands in the Caribbean, for example, were won as a result of battles with the French or other people. Parts of Africa were actually, it was exploration followed by fights with other European people, etc., etc., etc. So there was nobody sat down in Whitehall and said, well, yippee, let's have an empire. How are we going to create it? And indeed, this is supported by Joseph Chamberlain at the end of the 19th century, wanting to create this system of imperial preference. The idea was to try to link the empire economically to create this, I suppose, a precursor of the single market in the European Union. But he could actually get very little political support from anybody. Nobody, either in the colonies or back at home, was particularly bothered by this. So the idea that the British went around the world raping these countries to make vast amounts of money as a deliberate policy is completely wrong. Certain individuals did make money. For example, at the time of the American War of Independence, the government made more money from the single island of Barbados than it did from the 13 colonies. That's just a fact, an economic fact.
That's
so
amazing.
Yes,
that's
and certain individuals did make, but it was never, there was never some sort of national idea. Oh yes, let's sort of run the rest of the world. That came later as a result of, we have all this stuff, we ought to at least try and run it properly. And then you have this idea, well, we have some kind of mission to bring advantage to people who don't have it. So in India, for example, the practice whereby a widow was burned on the funeral pyre of her dead husband, we sort of put an end to that because that was not a good idea. But that is forgotten in the modern world because we were just terrible people and we invented slavery and we enslaved all these poor West Africans. Again, it's people rewriting history the way that they've rewritten history in the United States, where the Civil War at the time was more about state rights than anything else, but in more recent years, with the benefit of hindsight, has been seen more about a racial conflict than anything else.
There was slavery was definitely a part of it, but yeah, you're right. The point was that if it had been all about slavery, then the first thing you do is turn the slaves loose by declaring the independence of the slaves immediately and not waiting a couple of 2.5 years or whatever it was. But you know, I don't want to.
No, that's not the. But
it's such a heavy issue that.
Yes.
But wait, you reminded me of something that's very interesting. I'd like for you to throw this out now. So I had said, what was the difference between American imperial impulse and the British imperial impulse? You're saying there was a pulse, but not an impulse on the British side. But wait a second, let me finish.
I think the British imperial impulse was very reactive to what had actually happened on a large number of free enterprise activities, which had to be brought under some degree of control, particularly India, because a lot of people felt the East India Company was just abusing the system.
I can't get you to stop once I get you on one of your pet things, and you're so knowledgeable on this source. But I want you to comment further, but let me throw out something that you raised. Okay. You may not have even realized it. It's a very interesting subject, and I want you to hold forth. But the subject is this, that the British stumbled into an empire. The Americans didn't want an empire, apparently still don't want it. Yet, I would suggest that the Americans very carefully controlled the sea lanes and promoted American business, building a business empire throughout the world in the 20th century, in a very calculated fashion, using intelligence services developed after the CIA, after World War, or during World War I, but then called the CIA after. And even the brothers who were, the head of the CIA was Allen Dulles. His brother was John Foster Dulles, who was in charge of, who was a British, the American State Department chief, who was developed the policy of containment with, what's his name? Now I've forgotten his name. It'll come back to me. After the war. So there was a very calculated American impulse to control the sea lanes and control the commerce throughout the world and protect other people's commerce so people could trade, not just America. and that this would lead to peace and prosperity. That was the idea.
I think the idea was right. I mean, it certainly part of the motivation of the dismemberment of the British Empire was because the Americans thought they'd like to get their paws on the certain British overseas markets. And you have to ask yourself, well, okay, fair enough.
I believe Roosevelt actively was promoting that.
He was promoting, and the problem with Churchill was he was not really great on the economic front.
No.
And the nation had a very bad deal from the United States during the Second World War. In a way, I think we paid the last debt from the Second World War to the United States sometime very relatively recently. I mean, I think it was under the preceding Conservative government, whereas many other countries who were indebted to the United States or indebted to the United Kingdom, having been advanced money by the United States, those debts were forgiven. But that's history. I think you might look at the Middle East and think, well, was it a good idea to destroy British influence so completely when you see what goes on in the Middle East now? But yes, in that sense, they were similar, this idea of trade. And I think the part of the problem is simply this, which some Americans, the wise Americans do realize, and you realize, but to protect American business, you have to actually have most of the world being able to buy your goods. And they can only buy your goods in the context, by and large, of a free economic system. And unfortunately for America and anybody, you can't just sit back and say, well, we'll close our doors, because if you close your doors on the outside world closes its doors on American products and American trade. And this is part of the problem. And so for many people say, oh, well, America's doing too much. It's like many things in life, you can't, if it falls on your lap to deal with it, you can't always pass the buck to somebody else. And I think that's the problem all major imperial powers have after a point.
Yeah, let's go back to, thanks for that. Let's go back to very interesting comments. We always have good conversations. But, even we're sitting over a glass of wine and we talk for 3 or 4 hours, don't we?
Of course.
Yeah. Now, regular meetings and with other people. But the thing I wanted to ask you is, what's the percentage of British with passports? It must be very, very high.
I think it's well. I don't have any figures to hand, but most people I think it must be
over 50%.
Oh, I'd have said a long way over 50%. Yes.
So the Americans 20%, British probably 80% have passports.
You see, but don't forget. I mean, we're in Europe. I mean, there are lots of places you can fly to. Quite close by. America is a long way from anywhere else. If you go to Canada, you can drive, presumably, or take a train.
But you still need a passport, don't you, to go to Mexico? I'm not sure. Mexico.
I don't know.
I think you can do it.
I don't know what the internal North American arrangements are.
Well, you can do it on a driver's license, I think. I haven't been to Mexico in a long time. I don't.
If you're an American citizen, then your country has a lot to offer without actually going anywhere.
Well, this is it's massive.
And also you have this frontier mentality. So a lot of people in these places are probably sort of they're okay, not in recent history, but that the national mentality doesn't disappear overnight. So they sort of conquered this bit of land or tamed this little bit of land, and you don't have to go anywhere because this is the El Dorado for which my grandpappy fought. Why do I have to go anywhere else where I don't?
There is that's a really good point.
Where I don't understand the language and things don't work, and the value for money is not as good as I always used to say that $1 buys in America a lot more than a dollar equivalent buys in other countries, by and large.
Well, certainly in Europe.
Oh, it used to at the time I thought.
There's more parity now. But and I mean, England used to be horrendously expensive for goods and eating out. And that is not the case anymore, but it's very high on rent and energy.
And also the issue is another. I mean, it's all about. I think no decision is ever made in isolation. It's also about subliminal messages. Yeah. If on the rare occasions I've been to the United States, you switch on the television news, and it's also parochial. So Americans are not whereas you switch on the news channels in the UK, half the bulletin will be telling you what's happening in the rest of the world. Or if you listen to Radio 4, the Today programme in the mornings, It's news from all over the world. So you're thinking about the rest of the world. But American TV news, as I recall, is so parochial. It's about something which is happening in your town or the next town, or maybe within the, the state capital somehow seems a long way off in America when you watch local television news. And I think that's part of it. So people's influences they're not every day thinking about the rest of the world. And I think that also has if you don't think about it, you're not aware of it, you don't have necessarily the inclination to visit it.
Very good. Let's move on. I have another subject for
very good.
The last subject for today. Another interesting one, also from the Drudge Report. This is from the AP, and it's from Melbourne, Australia. The House of Representatives on Wednesday passed a bill that would ban children younger than 16 years old from social media, leaving it to the Senate to finalize the World First law. This is a big deal. What say you?
Well, instinctively, I'm against people banning things, but I do think we have to acknowledge, as do those who actually created this in the first place, that social media is dangerous, particularly in its addictive qualities. I get onto the metro in the mornings here when I go into town, and every adult is staring into a mobile telephone. Now, I stare into mine, but that's because I read the Times or the Spectator, or I'm doing the crossword. And whereas without that, I'd have taken a book to read.
What do you think?
But I think it's dangerous for youngsters, particularly because children and school children are quite nasty at times. And I think the ability of social media to be nasty, really, really nastily, and make particularly young girls feel somehow inadequate. You can spread insults or rumors about somebody very easily. They're under pressure to send photographs to others, all this sort of thing. We didn't have to contend with them when we were children. And I think that's part of the problem. It's not like social media is a tool like any other. Anything is a tool.
Well, people tried to bully you. We just didn't have it anonymously. You knew who they were.
And they had to actually physically do it. They had to actually turn up and bully you. Now they can bully you online. And then so people are sitting in their bedrooms receiving these messages on their telephones, and they're alone, and they're, by definition, everything is amplified.
Yeah, this goes to.
And
Sharon
so I do think,
sorry, let me say this. Sorry. This goes to Sharon Stone's point about this adolescence, and we've talked before about the general adolescence of the conversation, all the insults and everything that's translated into the highest levels of discussion, or the most prominent levels of discussion anyway, if not the highest. That it's like a big high school out there because of social media, because people take pot shots at each other, and you don't even know what their name is. They use
exactly. They're
anonymous.
It's the ability for anonymous people to deliver horrific abuse to complete strangers.
Yeah, which is it's a coward's nirvana, because you don't know who the people are. I mean, if I say anything to somebody, I know my name's there. So I expect them to come.
I mean, I appear on all these things under my real name, so people can identify who I am.
Yeah, me too. Or easily, verifiable who I am. And when I make a comment, you can go to my, for example, YouTube and see, 100 hours or more of material, and you can see that I'm a real person. Whereas a lot of times I get these comments. A lot of times they're Russian bots or something like that, and you go to the person's site and there's nothing there. It's like it was created to make one comment.
Well, exactly. So yes, so I can sympathise with I mean, there was on Netflix, of all places, a very good documentary, The Social Dilemma, where they interviewed a number of people who had leading positions in Instagram, Facebook, etc.
Yeah.
And a number of them said, if we had realized what we were doing, we wouldn't have done it. Or those who won't let their children be involved in it, won't let and because it is dangerous. And it's also dangerous for that sense. It's also dangerous as a distraction. And we're all guilty of it.
Is Facebook useful anymore?
Not anymore. I mean, as I've said to you, you know, if it's nice to keep in touch with your chums, the problem is you don't ever see your chums on Facebook because you're surrounded by advertisements and things, or posts, not even advertisements, but something encoded in your feed for stuff which is wholly irrelevant to your life.
Yeah, and they put these filters on some time ago that cut your friends out, so your friends don't see it. You get ads only if you like some, I don't know how it works, but you just don't see that many people on it.
No, I keep seeing, and then you'll see a post from a friend about 3 weeks after it happened. You think, well, why didn't I see that 3 weeks ago? Or whatever it is.
You're too busy sending you ads. I don't know how people, they must live with their, at their computer posting things and paying promotion on Facebook. I don't see that it's worth it. But I do like YouTube. I think YouTube is
like everything,
the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah, well, YouTube is quite, like anything else, if you use it sensibly, there's a lot of useful information there.
Oh, hell yeah.
Interesting films about all sorts of put on by perfectly reputable scholars or
documentaries are amazing, and the scholarly conversations are amazing.
They are good. So that is
the top minds on any subject.
But there's also quite a lot of rubbish even on YouTube.
Well, that's true. But I mean, if you really want the best cat videos, you should go to TikTok, though. Right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not really into cat
videos.
I'm not into cat videos. So
you are.
No, I'm not.
You're secretly. Or actually, you told me raccoon videos were your thing.
No, I didn't.
Which is odd. I thought it was weird, but a man can have a fetish, and I'm
ho 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 ho.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Nice Santa Claus impression.
A very good, nice. If we're allowed to do Santa Claus impressions, because people, with their perverted minds, always think of something else, which is I just find incredible. Well, Oniswaki Malipons always comes to mind. Evil to him who thinks evil of it.
Yeah, Oniswaki Malipons. This also says that Generation Z is spending 6 hours a day online. 6 hours a day. Is that a lot, you think?
Well, it depends. If you and I are online a lot, but I'm online because I work remotely and I'm looking at emails and stuff. So my device is probably recording that I'm online.
Yes.
But I think it means Generation Z is not actually working online. They're using it by way of diversion.
Well, they're watching TikTok, and I don't know. I mean, but probably they're watching TikTok and they're and things like that, and posting pictures of themselves on Instagram and whatever, and pictures of what they're eating, and just recording every moment.
I know, it's weird. It's odd that those who have the least to say have to have to make the most fuss of it on social media. Empty vessels make the most noise.
Okay, here's the last thing. I think we exhausted that. So we're on the fence about Australia banning this, but it's probably a good thing. We're going to lean to it being a good thing.
I think so.
Banning the social media for under 16.
I don't know how they police it, but that's a different issue.
Well, you can't drink till you're 21, and social media may be worse if it's abused. Probably. I don't know. They're both dangerous if they're not respected. Whereas drugs are fine. I mean, you're always telling me, oh, I can't wait till we try out the new peyote I just got in from.
I
think it come from? Yeah, I don't know how you get peyote in Europe. So
I don't even know what this stuff is. As you know, I'm very
Yeah, okay. I know you're doing a disclaimer because you don't want the Gestapo over at your house.
Well, anybody, I've never used this stuff at any stage in my life, so.
Here's what U.S. intelligence is saying now. It's saying about Putin and nuclear stuff. Nuclear attack is unlikely despite Putin's warnings. Nuclear attack is unlikely. What do you think?
Yeah, unless he takes complete leave of his senses, I think it's unlikely for a number of reasons. One, I think if Ukraine has taught him nothing, it is in actual fact that there comes a point when even the West wakes up and does react. Number two, he is obviously frightened of any retaliation by the United States. Number three, his supporters in China, I think, are very fearful of there being a wider conflict, because that will upset their business plans as well. So I think for those three, and it was interesting that apparently, as you will know, that intercontinental ballistic missile which arrived in Ukraine last week.
Yes, exactly.
Apparently, the old protocol whereby the Russians told the Americans it was on its way worked, and the Americans did know that it was coming.
Yeah, they did that, but there's another idea that, sorry, I got something in my eye now. There was another thing, the approval of the long-distance missiles being shot into Russia. This was the Russian answer, so that Putin looks strong, because if he does nothing, he gets weaker and weaker. But just, they've lost 1 million people one way or another in this war now. Just on the Russian side, so it's a lot. God knows how many the Ukrainians have lost, right? Exactly. So he's got to save face, doesn't he?
He does.
Gosh, my eyes are going now.
I'm sorry to hear that.
For some reason. Anyway, that's all we've got for today. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, yes.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. And talk to you soon.
Look forward to that.
Cheers.
Ciao.